a very interesting 12 p.m. show, if I do say so myself. As you have probably gathered from the title and the thumbnail, today we are going to be speaking about Arsenal and their perpetual ability to keep fumbling the title. Because actually, I'm baffled by it. I am absolutely baffled by it. I find it incredibly interesting, just from the point of view of like someone, as I said, who studied this kind of thing in terms of psychotherapy, psychology, how the brain works. And I just find the whole thing fascinating. So just to be clear from the start, obviously this channel isn't about rage bait, it's not about being nasty or anything like that, so do remember in the comments, have some fun but keep your tone light. This is more just from a pure interest point of view rather than completely bashing Arsenal, so just to set the tone from the start. But big up to you guys in the chat. I see we have Gaz Elliott is with us, he's saying big up Lou. Rob Always United is back with us. I was going to say of course is in the chat, but not of course. Rob was absent from us yesterday, but he has rejoined the teacup party today. So welcome back to Rob, and hello to anyone who might be watching this not on the live, watching it on the catch up, because obviously Saturday, Sunday are football days and people have a lot going on and may not always catch it live. But as I said, this is a subject that I personally have been finding like super interesting. So I wanted to look into it and see if I actually could see a pattern. I sort of felt, and again, I don't know if this was something that was like, I was picking up from social media. I don't know if it's something that I kind of got into my own head. I'm not sure. But I was kind of thinking they do seem to do worse when they play after City. So if City play first and win, that puts pressure on Arsenal, and that's when they do worse. And I wanted to just test that theory out because I didn't know if it was something, as I said, I'd sort of made up myself, or if it was actually going to be factually correct. So I did have a little bit of a look into that, and I wanted to share my findings with you guys. But before I share, first, hello to Paige. Paige is in the house. Big up to you. Please do smash a like on the video on your way into the show. If you're liking it, if you're enjoying it, if you're having a nice time with the tea party, do hit the like button, because what it does is it lets everybody know, and it'll let everybody know this is the place to be, this is where it's a bit fun, this is where it's a bit cool, join in with the teacup party. So please do hit the like button to let people know to join the tea party. Do also get voting in the poll. So I'm just interested to see where people are at. Do you see a pattern with Arsenal's drop-off, or it's just how they roll? So far, 25% have said yes, you see a pattern. So if you see a pattern, tell me what it is. 75% of people have said, I don't know what the pattern is, but it's how I think they roll. Paige is saying, smash the like button when you come in, subscribe and share on your socials. Yes, and Paige is fantastic. Props to Paige, because Paige shares all the videos on her X account. So thank you very much to Paige. I do see that and I appreciate it so much. It makes a big, big difference. Rob is saying, I can't help but get a feeling of deja vu with Arsenal. They don't seem to be able to handle the pressure. That does seem to be the case. Mama Flossie is in the house. She is saying good afternoon, teacups. Greg has joined us. Big up to Greg. Good afternoon, ma'am. Well, morning over here. It's morning where you are. You've still got another few hours of the day extra on top of us. After this stream, I am going to have leftover pizza. So it's very much afternoon now at this point over here. Not that you can't have leftover pizza in the morning, but you get what I mean. And now, both of the Tea Titans are now in the house. We have completed the set. Huge is also in the chat, and he says, good morning, Lou, with a little kitty cat. But yes, good morning, guys and gals. It's lovely to see you. Good afternoon. Welcome. Now, as I said, I was curious. This was pure curiosity on my part, because I was like, is this a real pattern, or is it something that I am making up in my head? So this is what I have gone and done. So this is all the game weeks, so just 1 to 32, because that's the one we're on. And then I've marked on the game week where Arsenal have played before City, I've marked it in here. And when they've played after City, I've marked it in here. I've then written down whether they have won, lost or drawn that game. And to be fair, it's pretty even in terms of they've played 15 times before Manchester City and they've played 16 times after Manchester City. And then, of course, there was a week where they played each other. Now, one of the befores is the week where City did not play at all, which, to be fair, they've definitely played before them because City still haven't played that match. So I've also marked in where the international breaks have happened. So I've actually spent a little bit of time on this. I don't normally spend a lot of time preparing. I get all my tabs, I have a look, but I mostly just kind of talk rather than... I don't like to pre-plan too much because I think sometimes then it doesn't feel genuine. It feels very polished and rehearsed, and I don't really like to do that. But this one I sort of had to look into it because otherwise I would have just been waffling to you guys. But I've like I said, I've marked in where the international breaks were and I've had a look. So, based on this, of the 10 games where Arsenal have dropped points so far, so these are the games, any loss or draw, obviously they've dropped points because they haven't won. So they didn't get all 3, so it's less than they could have gotten out of that match. So, of the 10 games where they've dropped points, i.e. drawn or lost, so far this season, 6 of them were when they played after Manchester City and 4 of them were when they played before Manchester City. So while they have dropped more points when they've played after City, it's not quite the proportion I thought. I thought it was more skewed. Before I actually went and looked at the numbers, I did think it was more skewed, that they had lost more, like a lot more points when they were playing after City. So as in City play and win, and then afterwards Arsenal feel the pressure, kind of what Rob was alluding to there. They go into the match feeling the pressure and they drop points. That was the pattern I thought was happening. But this is why I wanted to go and check it, because I wasn't 100% sure and I wanted to know. And it looks like, while yes, they are dropping more points when they play after City, it's not by a huge amount. So 6 games, huge. I'm sure it is possible to know, but I didn't write that down. No, I'm sure it's possible to know, but no, it's if it's not on the table, then I would have to go and pull it out. So we can do that if you want. European week. So let us look and see, because no, I didn't do that in advance. You guys. But can you all see that where it says the international breaks and stuff? Because another thing I thought was, how would they be? Because you know the way some teams are rusty after international break, but I've put them in, and to be fair, they've actually won 3 of their first 4 games back after an international break. And then obviously this week they've lost, but it wasn't directly after the international break. It was after the losses in the Carabao and the FA Cups. So the international break has no impact. In fact, they actually seem to do well after the international breaks. And it seems to be, as I said, six of the games have dropped points were after City. 4 of the games were before City. So again, I don't think that's enough to show like a real pattern as such, but we can go through the game weeks and see have they played in Europe. So let us look. Let's go to Arsenal. Let us go to matches. And let us go to all. These ones are finished. And then we have to go all the way back to back October, September, the Emirates Cup friendlies. Right, okay. So these here, we don't have anything. Do you know what I'll do? I might not just do Europe. I might do a game like in any other competition, because some of them they will have a double game week, but Or do you only want to specifically know if it's in Europe because obviously it's more challenging? Or do you want to look at if they've played any second game? Let me know. Any second game or only if they've been playing in Europe? Because obviously the pressure in Europe is a bit different than obviously when they're playing the likes of a Port Vale here. So let me know in there. But obviously for the first games, 1, 2, 3, 4, they didn't play anything else. 4 games, they didn't play anything else. So let's go back here. So this is no. Yes, JT, there is multiple formulas. However, I am only one human and I'm definitely not going to work out all of the formulas. This is just a little bit of a look into it. It's a bit of a talking point. It's the things that I had sort of been feeling before I looked at it. So while yes, there are definitely loads and loads and loads of formulas, and I'm sure there's a machine out there that can do it, I am only a human. So I'm not going to be able to look at absolutely every single little thing. I can't imagine you would expect me to. But we will look and see if there was a second game in the week, because that could be interesting. So let's see. 2-game week. So these ones are all no. This week they played each other, but I think this was actually after a... So then we had on the 16th, so between the 13th and the 21st, on the 16th, they did have a European game, but then Arsenal and City played each other, so we'll put it in, but it's not actually going to change anything for that one. But let us have a look at the next one. So then we have a game, and then in between that you have the EFL Cup. So before the Newcastle game, yes, there was a second match, so yes, and then they play Newcastle, and then they're back in Europe, so yes, and then they play West Ham, and then straight away Fulham, so no, and then yes. Now this might not be a scientific fact because I went game week by game week. This is going date by date, and I don't have the dates written down, so we're just sort of winging it a little bit here. But then you had, so this, yes, they did have a second one. There we are. And then before the draw, yes, they were in Europe, so yes. Then we go to the win, so no, and then yes again, so then no, and then before the next draw, yes. Sorry guys, if I knew you wanted this, I would have put this in, and it would have saved you just looking at me going, no yes, no yes. I'm sure it's very exciting for you guys to watch, but we're working our way through it. So before the draw, they did have, yes, so we've put that, and then 2 in a row. So then we have no and no. So no, no. And then we have the loss, and then we have Europe before the win. So yes, and then no, because we have Premier League straight away after that. Then we have yes. There is another game before that one. And then we have no, no, no. So 3 no's in a row. No, no, no. And then we have the FA Cup. So yes. Very scientific, guys. Very scientific. But at least we'll know it's accurate. Nothing like everybody watching you to make sure you're getting it right. So before the loss to Man United, they did have European football in the week. And then, oh, don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. Where's the Man United game? Go back. I hate that SofaScore does that. When you're sitting on something, you don't want to move it, and they just refresh for absolutely no reason whatsoever, known only to themselves why they refresh it. So yes, there was one before the Leeds match and there was one before the Sunderland match. So we're going yes and yes. Then we had the draw. So no, there was no match before that draw. And then you did have the FA Cup before that match, which brings us to no. Okay, so no. And then we get to the draw. Yes, you had the FA Cup. City didn't even play that week. And then, yes, obviously you were in the Champions League. So, yes. So, let us look. There was 10 games where they lost points. How many of them did they have a 2-game week? So, no there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So again, 6. So out of the 10 games where Arsenal... See, I'll keep this to come back just so we have it. So I want to write it down. Out of the 10 games where Arsenal... That is not how you spell where. I can do English. I can spell. Dropped points. So far, 6 of them were after a game in another competition, i.e. a double game week. So actually exactly the same. So 6 out of the games where they've played after City, they've dropped points, and 6 of the games where they had a double game week, so either they played Carabao Cup, FA Cup or Champions League, they've dropped points. So it's the same proportion. Which is interesting because, again, I probably would have expected that to be higher. I probably would have expected, they're tired, they're just tired, their muscles are tired, maybe injuries. So, again, it's not really conclusive because out of 10 games, it's only 6, which isn't a huge, it's not a drastic proportion. It's only 2 games extra. So again, it's not really what I would call a definitive pattern. You might say it's an indicator, it impacts, but I probably wouldn't say it's like a set trend, if that makes sense. Let me see. What are you guys saying? Because it took me ages to do that out and I was neglecting you in the chat. I wasn't talking to you at all. JT, if you listen to the stream, you'll know what point is being made. That helps. JT says, not sure what point is being made, just responding to the title. Yes, indeedy. But that is... Come on, guys. You're around often enough. The title is the starting point, and then you have to actually listen to the stream to know what's going on. Shem is in the house, the very lovely Shem. He says, good morning, lovely boss lady Lou and all of the Teacup family. Hope everyone is good today. Hopefully today is the day our season starts again for the 3rd time again. Poor Shem. You guys have had such a roller coaster of a season. I'm actually very interested to see what is going to happen today for Spurs. Very, very, very interested to see kind of what way does De Zerbi go. It's going to be very informative for the entire rest of Spurs season. So I think it's going to be a big day, a big, big, big day. And fair play to you, Shem, for your patience, because you're always in such good form, despite your team. So big up to Shem in the house. Gaz Elliott is saying City still need to win their games. 9 points is still a lot, to be honest. Yeah, and we made that point yesterday. At the end of the day, if City don't win the games, it literally doesn't matter. If City don't win the games, none of this matters at all, because this kind of thing will only be really, I suppose, dissected if if Arsenal don't win the league. So if Arsenal win the league, none of this matters whatsoever. The reason I'm doing it, as I said at the very, very, very start of the show, the idea isn't to pick on Arsenal. I find it genuinely interesting. When you see, and maybe not everybody operates like this, I don't know, am I a geek? Am I a nerd? I don't know what the populist term is. I don't know which term you're supposed to use these days, but I like all this stuff. I find it really interesting to see, is there a pattern, is there a reason, is there something they can do? Because you would imagine over the 6 to 7 years that Arteta has been at Arsenal, on the inside, you would imagine they've done much deeper analysis than I'm going to be able to do sitting on a YouTube channel. Do you know what I mean? They will have looked into everything. They've got full fitness teams looking at the injuries and who's available, who's not, who has a tweak in a certain game. When you've X amount of injuries, do you win or lose? All of that kind of a thing. Like, you could probably do like a 2-week series on this, looking at all of the different possibilities. So there's definitely going to be more than what we're looking at. I would say the big one we probably aren't looking at is injuries, and that's because you have to go in every week and you sort of have to rely on the data being pushed out there, and is it reliable on who was injured? Because sometimes people have a niggle or they're listed as on the bench, but we kind of know they're not fully fit. So not an Arsenal player, but a good example of this is Cole Palmer. There will have been several weeks where Cole Palmer was considered to be available to play and not injured, where he was definitely injured. And there's none of the sites really that are going to take account of that, but internally the club will have that. So the reason I find it really interesting is they surely, you have to think they've been looking at this for several years. You have to think internally they've been analysing all of this data and much, much more for years. And they haven't cracked the code because it keeps happening. And if they'd cracked the code, it wouldn't keep happening because they'd be able to combat it and prevent it from happening. So I'm baffled. I'm really baffled by what it could be that they haven't been able to crack it, other than mentality. But all the big teams these days have like sports psychologists and different things. So to be honest, it's not that I don't think there's a mentality involved, because I think there is. It's not that I don't think it's something psychological involved, because there has to be. But I don't think it can be the only thing. There has to be something else, because they've been addressing that too. So I find it really, really interesting. It's not about bashing a team at all. I want to go to Rob Always United, who very generously, after abandoning us for 2 shows yesterday, has put in a super chat. So big up to Rob. Thank you very much for your generosity. It is much appreciated. And Rob Always United says, I think Arsenal's past failures are putting huge pressure on them. It must really play on their minds. And so I suppose that is talking about the psychological impact. Maybe it's not the same thing every year. So maybe one year there was a raft of injuries, and I would have to go back years and years. And honestly, guys, I don't have enough information to do it accurately, if that makes sense. This is dipping a toe in the water to get an idea. But that probably is a really good point, because say the first year it might have been injuries, the second year it might have been maybe naivety on Arteta's part, he was still fitting into his role. The third season and the fourth season, maybe it's because they didn't have the striker. This season they've got the striker, but maybe it's the compound of the fact that they haven't done it for the last 5 to 6 seasons. So it might be that the first 2 to 3 to 4 seasons, they actually had different legitimate things. So like when Arteta went in, he did perform a bit of a clear out. He did kind of do what Amram was trying to do at Manchester United. Obviously they lost their captain, they lost some of their like really key important players and like big figures in the dressing room. So the first 1 to 2 seasons is sort of a rebuild, and then they wouldn't buy him a striker. Whether he wanted a striker or not, whether they were overruling him or not, I don't know that. I'll take Arsenal fans' word for that. But definitely by this point it might just be the compound of all the other things. There might have been legitimate reasons, or like reasons that are easy to point to for the first 2, 3, 4 seasons, and then at that point, because you haven't done it for 2, 3, 4 seasons, the pressure mounts, and at this point it is mentality, it is sort of psychological. So that's a really good point by Rob. 100% great point by Rob. Paige says, if City win their game in hand and beat Arsenal, they are on equal points, are they not? So let us go back. let us go back to Premier League round 32. Let us go to the standings. You guys should be able to see what I'm seeing, okay? So, Arsenal are currently top of the table. They're 9 points as it stands, ahead of Manchester City. If Man City win today, and Gaz Elliott there says City need to beat Chelsea today or it's over, and I agree with that. That is, for me, correct. But let's say City win today against Chelsea, because at the minute, until City play today, they have 2 games in hand, because Arsenal have played 2 games extra. So if Man City win today, that brings it to 6. If they beat Arsenal, that brings it to 3. And if they win their game in hand, they will be level on points. So that's correct by Paige. And then it will come down to goal difference. As it stands, Arsenal are 6 better in terms of the goal difference. But obviously, if Man City beat Arsenal, that's going to eat into that goal difference as well. So there's a lot of moving parts. But yes, Man City would have to win both of the games they currently have in hand, which includes today. And they need to beat Arsenal. And they need to overtake their goal difference. And even then, they would be level on points. They would only be winning it by goal difference. So yeah, that is right from Paige. And I agree with Gaz Elliott. 100% City need to beat Chelsea today or it's over. Huge is like, just whatever's easier for you. And of course I picked the hard one. Let me see what else are you guys said. Sorry guys, I'm so behind the chat. I'm answering stuff you have said 5 minutes ago. It's probably not, you have probably already updated your comments, but I hate to miss it. I do try and read as many of them as possible, because I think that it's an interesting conversation, and because we've a mixed group, we get all the different points of view. So I do find it really interesting. Let me just put that back on the screen, so if anybody joins us later, they'll know what we're talking about. Let me see. Gaz Elliott says Arteta will be sacked if he doesn't win the title this season. I think he will be too, and I think that's why they started the contract talks to be like, hey, we're definitely going to give you a contract. Here's a little boost for you. We believe in you. We're going to give you the contract. But I believe the reason they're not doing anything more than that until the summer is because I don't think he gets the contract if he loses. But I think he knows that, because you could see it on his face. In the Bournemouth match, he looked like a man whose job was on the line. And I have to say, like, whatever you think of Arteta and like a bit of banter, like, I do think it's hard, and I say this all the time at United because we go through so many managers. I do think it's hard as well, like when you know somebody's losing their job. So but I think he will be sacked if he doesn't. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I think he'll be sacked if he doesn't win it. Huge! This is why Huge is a tea titan, because Huge says, I believe our cult leader is beyond mere humans. Well, so did I until I got 13 and 31 mixed up. That made me feel a little bit more human. Rob Alwood United is wishing Shem the best of luck today. Oh dear, today it's Shem. Everybody's taking a turn being hit by the autocorrect. Today is Shem's turn. Shem just tried to say a normal hi to JT. He just tried to say hi, and then all of a sudden, howdy. Boom, autocorrect hit him with a howdy. Love it. Shem is nervous eating. Oh no, Shem. Well, I hope you'll celebrate it all off. JT says, I know it's hard to really analyse, but for me, the important factor to look at would be tactical approach from other clubs. And continues, and another question to explore would be the fitness requirements for Arteta's game plan and how it deteriorates with fitness levels dropping. Well, obviously now you can't, that would be impossible for me to analyse. You would need a computer for that. But I would, I suppose, make the very basic assumption, and it is basic, so it's not going to be flawless, but the basic assumption that as you work your way into the season, as all of the competitions start to ramp up, as you're like that starting to play more than one game a week, as you're travelling for international breaks and then having to come back, that is going to more and more impact your fitness. So for me, as the season goes on, generally the fitness is probably going to get worse overall because you're playing more and more and more. And I would definitely say, if we look here, right, there's the first, let's say 15 games, right? There's the first 15 games. They dropped points 1, 2, 4 of them. And then if we take the last 17 games, they've dropped points. Or if you want to do, we can do 16 and 16 because then that's 32. So the first 16 games, they lost 4. And the last 16, or they've dropped points in 4. And in the last 16 games, they dropped points in 6. Whatever metric we've used 3 different things so far. And all of them have been 6 versus 4. All of them. Oh dear. But in the second half of the season, so in the last 16 versus the first 16, you dropped points in 2 more matches. So it's 6 versus 4. Like I said, that's very, very basic, but to do the analysis on that is beyond my capabilities. Even as the teacup master, that is beyond my capabilities. I probably personally wouldn't count in the approach from other clubs. My point of view, because your job is to win the game regardless of the tactical approach. So that's not probably something I would rate. I understand for you, that's something that matters. For me, it's probably not something I would look at. Fitness and injuries, I do think matters. Because I think if you have a lot of players kind of unfit or on the borderline or with niggles or just out injured, I do think it matters. I think when you're more and more tired, your muscles are more and more tired, I do think that matters as well. What I would say is the teams you're facing, not all of them, but a lot of them are doing the same thing. So I do think it matters. I don't know how much. And that probably is quite subjective. Everybody probably weights it a little bit differently. Hugh just saying it just needs to be a slight drop to make a big difference, which is fair, which is very fair. And again, big up to Rob for his super chat. Thank you for that. JT says, I think there is more of a pattern in the latter half of the season. The defeats were diametrically different and underlying stats show it. So it's hard to find a common pattern throughout the season. The reason I looked at the international breaks is because I find the start of the season is very stop-start. Just stop, you start. I find that after the first batch of international breaks, I feel like the season then becomes more intense because the stop-start nature of it stops and you get into a bit of a rhythm with the season. So for me, I would probably have the cut-off point not at the halfway point of the season. I would probably have kind of during all these stupid international breaks, because you're like, what is it there? 3 matches, international break. Then you've got another 3 matches, international break. 5 or 6 matches, international break. Then you've got Christmas. And then you kind of, you're sucking diesel then, you're trucking then. And I do think stop, start versus the rhythm of the season, that I think makes a difference. The stop-start actually seems to suit Arsenal. The international break and then coming back to it fresh actually seems, up until here in the Carabao Cup, which is a one-off game with Manchester City, so I'm not 100% kind of where I lie on that one, but for the most part, after the stop-start, yous were doing okay. It was after that where all the yellows and reds kind of really start coming in. Again, you would need a machine and a lot more information, but it was something I wanted to at least look at a little bit. Shem says, since before March the 1st, Arsenal were a juggernaut. After March the 1st, only 3 set-piece goals, XG below 1, only 6 wins, hardly any attacking threat, but I still think if Arteta got out of his own way, they would win. I think that's a factor, Shem. I do. I think Arteta stands in his own way. I do. I really do. I think he needs to work through whatever this is with Pep. It's the mentor-student sort of dynamic. Arteta needs to work through that because I feel like he's putting it out accidentally. I don't think he's doing it on purpose, but I do think the players probably soak up a little bit of it. Winnie's in the house. Big up to Winnie. Nice to see you in the chat, my dear. Paige saying big up Blue and everyone that go into details and stats like that. Thank you very much, Paige. There's definitely people that do it a lot better than me. As I said, I just wanted to take a bit of a look of it. you could do, as I said, you could do a series of probably about 2 weeks on this, and you would need a lot more information, probably much more of an analytical mind than me. But this, I thought, was kind of some of the basic stuff that we talk about in general, and at least this is sort of factual. Do you know, it's not opinion or this or that. These were factually what happened and when. So if nothing else, it gives us a little bit of information. Huge is saying, I said it at the start of the season, Arsenal will bottle it, but they won't be good but there won't be anyone good enough to capitalise. Huge might be on for the prediction of the season. He also says, I think it's experience. Arsenal are not good enough to clear City, and City have enough experience to see things out while being slightly worse than Arsenal. JT says, while the first half of the season was far from perfect, we controlled basically every game, yes. The meaningful difference is we cannot keep control even against Mansfield now. I think the meaningful difference is mainly tactical approach from the opposition and other factors like fitness level. Funny enough, the low blocks we were crying about were actually a blessing in disguise. I do think, what did you say? The first one. Yes, this obviously doesn't take account of performance. I feel like your performances, take aside the results, I agree with that completely. I think your performances have dropped off. And I think that's a big thing, because when you don't believe, when your performances are dropping off, your belief drops, and then it's only a matter of time before the results follow. So I think that's a great point from JT. Shem says, I think the first half of the season you were playing without fear or pressure. The nervousness is coming from Arteta and he's projecting that onto the players, plus they're afraid to attack. Shem saw a stat where it said there was over 30 passes. Yes. So, in the match against Bournemouth, there was over 30 back passes made to Raya. And I actually mentioned that in my match reaction. I was talking about, it felt like Arsenal, while they had possession, was side to side to side to side to back to side to back to side. And then obviously Raya was under pressure. Raya then was making mistakes and doing silly things because he was under pressure because of all the back passes. So that is something we talked about in the match reaction. So again, yeah, good point by Shem. Rob has sunshine today. Rob with the weather update. JT says, I think that's a factor, but as well the teams aren't playing us with fear and actually found out Arteta's tactics. Yes, I don't feel like teams come into a match with you panicking or fearing. I agree with that. I do agree with that. And I think when we used to say this at Manchester United, obviously back when we were really good, the match can be lost in the tunnel. We used to beat teams in the tunnel. Before anyone ever stepped foot on a blade of grass, we were winning the match in the tunnel. And so when teams don't fear you, that's a problem. So again, another really good point by JT. Also, yes, Shem is saying nowhere near the best of Odegaard. Odegaard's having a tough time. He's not good at the minute. And then Saka always being injured also isn't helping. Harold's in the house. Welcome to Harold. Nice to see you, my dear. JT says, for me, the thing to look at is not wins, draws, losses. It's games we actually were shite in. I think winning by grinding out a game or a player stepping out is a loss on another day and is part of the problem. So the likes of the PSG. No, not PSG. The Southampton one. It was the Southampton one where Havertz scored the late goal, wasn't it? What game am I talking about? My brain's away, guys. My brain is away. What was the match where Havertz scored right at the end? Sporting. Why am I saying PSG? This one. So, like, to me, on another day, that's a draw or a loss. So I do take that point, but I do think win, draw, loss is an important metric, because at the end of the day, what decides whether you win the league or not is whether you've won the matches. So you could have 10 fantastic performances, but if you draw them all or you don't win them all, they don't matter. They do and they don't. They're not going to win you the league. So I don't think I would say win, draw, loss doesn't matter. I think it matters very much, because at the end of the day, if you win your next games and you win the league, the rest of it won't matter. Nobody's going to be talking about it. Some diehard fans, but for the most part, nobody's going to be talking about it. So I do think win, draw, loss matters very much. In fact, I think it's the most important thing. But I do understand your point. Performances matter. And like that really good example with Sporting, only for that Kai Havertz late goal, like that was an added time. You just don't win that, and then it's a whole other thing. And you've had a number of matches like that this season. So I agree with you in part. Everybody's saying hi. Sorry guys, I'm trying to make sure I get everybody's points in. Harold is saying, I'm late, but in my opinion, they were only one game turnaround in from City. Arsenal have also been destroyed by the injuries, and last time Arsenal played great and were stable in performance were before Odegaard started getting injuries last season. Huge saying, I believe the signs were there early. They needed set piece goals a lot to take the lead or score an equaliser, but now that it's not as effective, they aren't the same. And I think that's interesting, because I said, and I stand by this, I personally don't really have an issue with set piece goals. I don't care. Get the ball in the back of the net. As I said, for me, the most important thing is the points on the board. Get the win. Performance is a bonus, but get the win. However you get the win, again, pretty football is a bonus, but get the win. So I do think I didn't really care so much about set piece goals. However, I think the problem is, as JT said, when people found them out, when people figured out how to combat the set piece goals, because they couldn't or they can't at the minute score other goals, or not convincingly, it has developed into a problem. So I agree with that. K-Jot is in the house, welcome, and says Arsenal have got one way of playing and everyone's worked it out. Counter-attack football deals with them more times than not. Genuinely not set up for must-win games, and I'm here for it. Fair point by K-Jot there. Fair point. JT says, that's why I say low blocks were actually a blessing in disguise. Teams figured out we are completely shit at transition and we are more likely to score against a low block than on transition. The Mr. Arsenal podcast is in the house, welcome, and says, when you got a manager setting up not to lose home and away and it affects our attacking play the way it does, you know who the problem is. We need a better mentality from the manager. And JT says, as long as you match us physically and can keep up with the runners, you don't have to fear counter-attacks at all. Lots and lots of strong comments today. I love it. It's very interesting. As I said, I just find it very, very interesting. Jenny's here. Welcome to Jenny. Andrew is also here and says, Andrew, yesterday we had a look at that stat. It's not true. It's something TalkSport put out, and from what was researched by Huge in the chat, it's not actually correct. I haven't looked at it myself, but Huge is pretty good on these things. TalkSport put that out and it was debunked in the chat yesterday. So, yeah, Flossie delivering the news. Shem is saying, I agree the gimmicks aren't helping at all. Now it's grind out wins for you and to go back to get in their faces and get the ball back. Your pressing has vanished. Everybody's saying hi. Guys, I've caught up with the chat. You lot have been chatty this morning. Thank you very much, because I do appreciate it. The shows are always so much better when we have a back and forth. I thought it was a really interesting topic. I thought it was something that needs to be looked at, obviously much more in depth than I can do. But I thought this was a really good starting point. I thought it was a really interesting point. Just some of the main things. Does it, because people talk about the mentality and, you know, they get nervous if City win and then they're sort of catching up to them, and I wanted to look at that. I think it was an interesting point, the game weeks where they have 2 games versus 1 game. Obviously we had a look at the international break. I think probably the only major thing that I haven't put in the table is how many injuries they had in a given game week. It might be a case that on another day I'll come back and look at it and add in. Now, it's, as I said, it's not going to count people with niggles, people that were on the bench that weren't fully fit, etc, etc, but it might give us a bit of an idea in terms of how many official injuries they had week on week. So I think that's I might come back when I have time and add that in, because again, it's something that can be measured. It was this many people were listed as injured or they weren't. So I can't really, what I don't want to do is, I don't want to just speculate because we don't know. But I do think some of you guys had some really good points. I've seen the news in the chat. I'm going to finish this point and then I'm going to go to the Tottenham starting lineup. So I think it's really interesting. I think mentality does come into it. I think, let me go back to Rob's one because I thought it was an excellent point. So just go back to Rob's super chat. I think Arsenal's past failures are putting huge pressure on them. It must really play on their minds. So some of the different seasons will have had different reasons, and now they've all compounded to, will we never get it over the line? The thing that's making the fans maybe a little bit nervous, a little bit stressed, question things, is probably making the players a little bit anxious and nervous and question things, and it has to be making Arteta feel nervous. He looked nervous against Southampton. Some fantastic points today. So, mentality, the fitness levels, the injury levels, some of the intangible things. I do think Arteta's a factor. Unknowingly, I think Arteta's a factor. The fact that some of your players are off the boil at the minute or injured. There's a lot. But I just thought it was a really interesting topic. So thank you guys for getting so involved. Let me just end the poll there and we'll take a quick look at Spurs. Do you see a pattern with Arsenal's drop-off, or it's just how they roll? 47% of you have said yes, there's definitely a pattern, and 53% of you have said it's just how they roll. I wonder how many rivals we have in the chat here. Okay. Andrew, it's been checked by 2 separate people, and it's not true. So if you want to go and check it, you'll be able to go and look. If you go back, like I use SofaScore, if you just go to SofaScore and go back to April of every year, you'll be able to see. So let me look here. So if you go to the Premier League on SofaScore, then just click Arsenal and click matches, you'll be able to go back through every match they've played and you can look at the dates and you'll be able to go through all of the Aprils, and that way it'll show you how many they've won, drawn, lost in April. All you have to do is scroll back. They go back quite a bit, but you'll be able to check it there. But we did have 2 different people in the chat check it out, and not true, as it turns out. So unless they said something really specific, but the stat itself isn't true as they said it on the station. JT says, the past failures do, of course, pressure, but you can always find pressure. It's about the leadership and how to deal with it. Arteta just hasn't got the experience to push the players through it. And, the Mr. Arsenal podcast picking on poor Paige and Jem. But let us have a look. Let us have a look at the Spurs match. So thank you all for getting involved in that conversation. It was really interesting. However, let us go to the starting lineups because the matches are soon and we're all going to go and watch them. So we are in round 32. Crystal Palace will face Newcastle at 2 o'clock as well. I'm going to pull up the Spurs lineup first, but we will also look at the Newcastle lineup as well. So Paige, good old Paige, is taking it on the chin and says, "You're right, Mr. Podcast. I had my fun yesterday with your lot." I love that. Nice and friendly. I love it. Good on yous, lads, taking it on the chin. It's nice because it's never easy to lose, so fair play. But let me share the screen so you guys can see what I can see. Here we are, and let's just click on Sunderland and Spurs lineups. So Kinski is in the goal. De Zerbi is starting like boom. So Kinski is in goal. Van de Ven, Romero, Gray, Udogi, Gallagher, Bergval, Porro, Muani, Richarlison, Solanke. That is going to be interesting. This is going to be interesting because this is about how does he come back. Vicario was still injured. Okay. Oh, sure, yes, he had to go and have the surgery, didn't he, Shem? Yes, okay, he had to go and have the surgery, Vicario. We spoke about that. I forgot all about it. Big up Shem bringing that back into the chat. Yes, so Vicario had to go and have a surgery. There's a few matches he's going to miss, Shem, isn't there? His recovery, he was to be out for a month and he only had the surgery maybe 3 weeks ago, I would say. He might miss another match as well. Good point from Shem. Thank you for reminding us of that. I appreciate it. JT says, "I think Roberto De Zerbi is an amazing appointment for Spurs. The problem is I don't really think it's about the coach as much as it is about the players." And guys, let me just read out Sunderland's lineup and then we'll also take a look at Newcastle as well. We haven't spoke about Newcastle in ages. They've just sort of fell under the radar a little bit. We'll have to concentrate on them a little bit for the next while. But Sunderland's lineup is it Roifs? Ruffs? How do you say his name? Roifs? Mukiele. 09, what a name. Alderete, Mandava, Siddiqui, Xhaka, well that's a big plus for them. Rig, Diarra, Lefay and Brobby. So you can tell which players I know and which ones I don't. That'll be a good match. It'll be interesting to see. But let us go into Newcastle as well, because Newcastle are playing Crystal Palace, who obviously fell off a cliff. Newcastle have been struggling. There's been a lot of talk around Eddie Howe, which we are going to discuss probably on Monday. Tomorrow's Monday. We're probably going to do that tomorrow's 12 p.m. show. We'll take a look at Eddie Howe. But lineups. So Newcastle's lineup is Ramsdale, Hall, Botman, Chow, Livramento, Tonali, Joelinton, Miley, Gordon, Osula, Jacob, Murphy. No Voltamada and no Wissa. Let us see. Wrong team. So Bruno G is out, Kraft is out, Shara is out. So Voltamada and Wissa and Alanga all on the bench. Very interesting. And Crystal Palace have Dean Henderson, Richards, Lacroix, Canvo, Munoz, Lerma, Hughes, me bestie, Mitchell, Johnson, Larson and Pino. You would imagine Newcastle's going to win that convincingly. Unless Dean Henderson has a fantastic game, I would reckon Newcastle are going to win that convincingly. But guys, let me read the last of your comments and then that will be us. We'll go and watch the football. JT says, "I missed it in the chat, so I don't think you sent me an app to analyse the final run of the title race." Oh, good stuff. Thank you, JT. You sent it as a tweet. Thank you very much. So yeah, now I know it's not a spam link. Shem says 3 weeks ago, even though he should have had the surgery in December or January. So yeah, isn't that what happened with Kudus? Sorry, we are going to end, but isn't that what happened with Kudus, Shem? He's having a problem because he's going to be out now completely because he's mishandled his injury in the first place, and now he's going to be out for the rest of the season and potentially miss the international break. And now Vicario should have had a surgery in December, January, and he's having it in March instead. Am I right there? That was exactly what happened with Kudus, is that his treatment was put off and now it's damaged him further. I mean, learn from your mistakes, Spurs. Paige says, interesting to see Elanga on the bench, a big part of getting Sweden to the World Cup during the international break. It is interesting to see Elanga on the bench. He has been a mixed bag this season, Elanga. I'm not a fan, just based on what I saw at United. I'm not a major fan. I thought he was okay. He was decent in some matches for Newcastle, but he was kind of on and off, up and down. JT says, do Spurs and Arsenal have the same medical centre? It sure looks like it. honestly, I think we're not forking out. None of the teams are forking out for the good medical people because this is a disaster. Kudus was coming back and was starting to train but got injured again. We've mishandled everyone's injuries because our boards suck in transfer windows. I mean, all the truths by Shem, and JT is saying Elanga is Martinelli in disguise. Okie dokie, guys, we are done. Thank you all very much for being here. Big up. Thank you, JT. I'll go and check out that link at some point later today. Thank you everybody for getting so involved in the chat. Really, really interesting discussion, really different points of view, really sort of different suggestions of what it could be. Big up to Rob for your very generous super chat. Thank you for that. Go and enjoy the football. Have a wonderful day, and I will speak to you all later on this evening, 7 p.m. Be there or be square. Have a good one, folks. Oh, before I go, this stream is going to redirect you to Kate and Jimbo. Kate and Jimbo are Spurs fans. They're doing their pre-match pump up before the Spurs match. So this is going to bring you there. They've already started, but this will bring you to them. Go and check them out. They're so lovely. And let them know I sent you. Tell them I said hello.